everybody. Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. My name is Mike Zaremba, and as per usual, we are Vancouver Real, podcasting out of Float House at 70 West Cordova Street in downtown Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, which is a city that is seated on unceded Coast Salish territories. And we haven't acknowledged that in a while, but I figured this is actually a good episode to do that again and bring it back.
Definitely.
So just to acknowledge that, there are basically three bands here that were originally here, the Musqueam people, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Squamish people. And now it's been officially recognized by, I believe, at least the municipal, provincial level as well, that is unceded land. So acknowledging that, of course, since we are Vancouver Real. And joining me behind the helm is my brother Andy.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you again. It's good to be back recording. And I'm excited for today's episode.
Likewise.
We've been doing this subject matter quite frequently lately, and I like it. It just, it just comes to us, so we talk about it, and we're sort of a channel for this sort of stuff now.
I think so. Well, and we're coming fresh off of back-to-back retreats ourselves, so
right.
I think it kind of is good timing.
Yeah.
But you did. You had your Man Talks event last night. So how did that go?
It was amazing. We had 100 people out, 4 really good speakers. They really dove deep, and they just got in touch with their most personal stuff and shared it in front of a group of people, and it was amazing.
Awesome.
It was kind of chaotic, to be honest. Like we were like 15 minutes over time, but because Connor was speaking as well, we hadn't really planned for that.
Oh,
but
he was in town.
Yeah, he was in town.
Cool.
He stayed in town for that just because we have new sponsors, Saks, and they gave everybody in the underwear a free pair of underwear in the audience, a free pair of underwear, and helping us out with the financials and stuff.
That's cool.
Really good. And we have another event coming up on October 22nd called The Power of Trust. We have 3 really powerful speakers: Matt Chan from PSI, we have Sat Chen, and we also have Angus Reid, an ex-BC Lion football player, all talking about trust. So it should be a really great event, and we'll be launching it in the next few weeks. So if you want to connect with that, you can go to mantalks.com or the Man Talks Facebook or community page. It should be up on there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. And I'll just give a quick little plug for the Vancouver Real community page. You can find that on Facebook. We just got our emails back going again, so just be on the lookout for those emails and any events we might have coming up in the future. And also you'll get every week you'll get the episode of the podcast and connected to the blog post and things of that nature too.
Yeah. And one thing I'd like to put out there too, like at the beginning today, is if you know anyone that would be a really great guest for the podcast for Vancouver Real or potentially for Man Talks, you can reach out to me through my website, andysremba.com, and I have like a scheduling link so you can book a call with me or just send me an email. We're always looking for really great guests to have on both venues. So if you know anyone, please feel free to reach out. And also, we're going to be doing a Mindful Mass event in October. Not exactly sure of the date yet, but keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you'd like to get in touch with that community, it's this Vancouver Flash Meditation Mob on Facebook. This is a group page. You can connect there, or mindfulmass.org, and we'll be doing another free meditation very soon.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Okay. I think that's everything, eh? We can dive in?
That's it. Yeah.
All right. Very excited to welcome back to the episode Stephen Gray, author, event coordinator, and, just a spiritual man, for lack of a better term. But welcome back, Stephen.
Thank you.
And I'm actually halfway through your most recent publication that you edited and authored. It's called Cannabis and Spirituality. Really enjoying it. It's an explorer's guide to an ancient spirit plant ally. And I think, you were kind of sharing how this it's been out for about a year now and how well it's been doing.
Actually, closing up on 2 years now.
Oh, is it 2 years? Oh, gosh.
December 2016.
Okay.
Was when it first came out. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Time is
flies.
distorted.
Yes.
All right. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm about halfway through it. And as I kind of shared with you on the phone, my own personal cannabis relationship right now has been on a pause for a couple years. And I'm very, I just say consciously re-exploring, even before I work with the medicine again, just how I want that relationship to unfold. And I really am appreciating your book that you created. So thank you.
You're most welcome, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
And also you are the coordinator and one of the co-organizers of this year's and 8th annual Spirit Plant Medicine Conference, which is November 2nd to 4th at UBC yet again. And Mark Karan is your co-organizer.
You got that right.
I nailed it. Eh? And this is something that we've been a part of as Float House, a sponsor. We got a table, I think, for the last 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah, ever since we've been open.
So we can't
anyways.
break that streak now, can we?
I guess not.
We gotta get
Did you
our
hear
act
that, Mark?
Yeah, Mark, we're gonna make it happen. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll get our people to help
It's always
us
a
out.
fantastic event.
It
The
is.
speakers are always great. The content's amazing. Like, I love it.
And
Yeah,
this
you
year
should go.
is going to be second to none, I think. So I'm excited to first get a download of what's to expect this year. But then we have a few other topics we want to get into as well that we'll get into. But can you just maybe share with people what they can expect at the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference for 2018?
Thanks. Well, I think it's going to be our most ambitious one yet. First of all, ticket sales are going like crazy, and I don't really know quite why that is. I know Mark's doing a really good job of social media and so on. It may be partly to do that we've got a couple of names, as it were, that we've always had people that were sort of, semi-name people, so to speak. But Paul Stamets is kind of beyond that
what?
level.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he's known well outside psychedelic world,
Yeah.
of course,
Sure.
you know, with his books like Mycelium Running
Right.
and his company, I don't know the name of it, but they make medical mushroom, pills and stuff.
Yeah, they're like
Yeah.
it's like supplements, different
Supplements,
Yeah,
you
really
get 'em
good
in
quality stuff
local
too.
sort of health food stores and whatnot.
Yeah.
He's sort of all over the place that
He
way,
is.
and very in demand. And I've actually been trying to get him for about 4 years, and this was the first
Right.
time
Wow.
that I could get him to a place where we could afford him for one thing,
Uh-huh.
and that he was available.
Yeah.
Looking forward to him. He'll be on first thing Saturday morning.
Very cool.
We've expanded it. We've done Friday evening a couple of times before, but mostly just Saturday and Sunday. And this year we're
Right.
adding Friday evening
Bring it
again.
back. Great.
I'm really looking forward to that one because it's going to be given over completely to two amazing characters, Dennis McKenna and Wade Davis.
Wow.
Oh man,
Strangely enough, at age of 71, Dennis is becoming more. His reputation is spreading. He's becoming more known.
You know, he was just
he's
on
always
Joe
been in
Rogan.
the shadow of his brother Terrence on some level, right? He's been doing the slogging, the research, the ethnopharmacological work, and so on. Terrence was the voice, the silver-tongued, Blarney Stone-kissed, eloquent fellow, and Dennis has always been a little bit in his shadow that way, and he readily acknowledges, that nobody's in Terrence's league that way. But he's been working his whole life on this stuff, the ethnopharmacology and that sort of thing. And I'm really happy to have him back again. This is actually his third time, although it was 3 or 4 years ago was the last time, I think. And so what's going to happen on Friday night is after we do the opening ceremonies, which will be quite brief, a little dedication to the Musqueam people. We might have a Musqueam band member in. Dennis will give a half-hour talk, which is going to be called Climbing the Vine, 45 Years of Ayahuasca.
Wow.
So that'll be fun. That'll be a
Yes.
short one. And then Wade is going to speak, Wade Davis. I'm always surprised at how many people don't know who Wade Davis is. I mean, the guy is either authored or co-authored probably 24 books. I was just looking on Amazon yesterday, and his name is on, at least a couple of. Actually, I stopped after the third page. It could be even more,
Right.
He actually became famous, and I think more of a household name over 30 years ago when he did an ethnographic study called "The Serpent and the Rainbow" about voodoo and religion in Haiti, and then Hollywood made a movie of that. Which I'd heard wasn't very good, but I just talked to somebody yesterday who said he liked it. But in any case, that kind of made him well known and so on. But he, the best thing about Wade in some sense is he's brilliant, and he's. If anybody could rival Terrence McKenna for eloquence, it would be Wade Davis. He can speak for an hour or two with no notes, and it's poetic and just beautiful. He's wonderful. He's going to give a little talk called "Smoking Toad." And I think it's about an adventure he had in South America several years ago.
Okay.
And then he and Dennis are going to sit down together and have a kind of fireside chat. and they're just going to reminisce, talk about the past, present, and future of psychedelic works and stuff like that. And they've known each other pretty well. They've been on adventures together, so that'll be very interesting, I think, as well. And then, there's a lot of other people. Kris, who we've been talking about, just blows my mind.
Yes.
He, thinking of Terence again, Terence did some remarkable deep psychonautic exploration, but Kris Beisch's personal explorations, would leave him, walking in the park on a sunny Sunday afternoon.
You shared with me a video of Christopher and Beisch, Bache, and I actually might put a link to that video in this show notes, just because. I listened to it this morning, and I think we're going to get into that conversation a little bit later, because it's going to kind of touch on something that you wanted to personally, you're very interested in. So maybe we'll save that for now. Actually,
it's kind of the birth of the future human idea,
right?
Anyway, he's amazing, and cool. Do you want me to? I mean, I was going to describe a little about his 20-year journey. Do you want me to save that? For later?
We'll save that for now. I think I want to make sure that. Because I like to share a little bit about my experience at the conference. So first of all, spiritplantmedicine.com is the website for everybody. Early bird tickets are still available, so if you're interested, I jump on it sooner than later to get on that. But I really appreciate the conference for its approach. You actually do a great job of emceeing it. And are you emceeing this year as well?
I think so, unless somebody boots me out.
Right.
But that would have to be me.
But it's kind of, as you describe it, you call it ceremonial light, LITE, in the sense that, you actually, you open the space and we'll close the space, and you bring a little bit of a more, I don't know how to describe it, a little bit more a sincere intention and energy into it than just a conference with presentations. So definitely there's a vibe to it, there's a culture to it, and I think that is worth noting, because I really appreciate that part of it. It's a very unique conference in that way, unlike any other conference I've ever been at.
I think so, yeah. Well, I deliberately wanted to have only one talk going on at the same time, for one thing, and then to treat this as kind of liminal space as you enter the space. I keep thinking of, I don't want to go into this or discuss it, but if you guys know what the Eleusinian mysteries were.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, it was in a sort of a kind of an underground like space. So I always think of the actual room where we hold this as kind of the temple. That people are entering, in a quote light way, as you say, but that there's a kind of a frontier or an entry point there, and we have somebody standing at the door for that reason, just like kind of wake up, as you walk in and treat that space, as energetic space. And I think it actually happens. Quite honestly, I'm not one of these people that easily sees, disembodied spirits and so on. But I'd be pretty sure that they were there last year, and maybe every year, just to be interested in that work. But last year, by the end of Sunday, I could barely keep from crying, and I think a lot of other people were also feeling that way.
There's a palpable energy that kind of builds, I'd say, out to the weekend, and then it has this closing moment that, it gets, unusually emotional. Like you wouldn't expect that, but it actually does. There's a connection that happens, and really you have to experience it to understand it, I suppose. But it's very beautiful. It's very beautiful in that realm. But
it's also I just want to add, if I may, that it's a great way for people to meet other people of similar interests and aspirations.
Right.
That it's a community building and so connecting, but also building that energy in the community. Like to empower the energy for this mission. Which is. I would argue anyway, the most important mission, not to, glorify ourselves, but, humanity's in deep doo-doo at this point, and we are in urgent need of a consciousness revolution on this planet if we're going to, see anything other than a, dark dystopian future. And so these medicines are the most direct way to access, what you might call unconditional reality. And that's the mission underlying the use of the medicines. They're the tools, but there's a vision behind it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we'll probably slide into that conversation a little bit deeper with when we get into the Christopher Beisch discussion a little bit.
Sure.
But I want to shift, because since we have you here,
Yep.
and being the chief editor of Cannabis and Spirituality, Canada coming into a legalization period, which is unprecedented, I believe, in the G8 nations and first world country. I don't know if I can say that, but regardless,
I think it's the number. We're jumping ahead of
Right.
anybody. I mean,
Correct.
Uruguay has legal cannabis.
Right.
When they first started it, it was only for citizens, and I don't know if they've changed that. But if
Okay.
they haven't, then we've kind of
Even leaped
leapfrogged
that.
them in that
Right.
sense.
That-
Portugal has decriminalized all drugs,
Right.
but basically, I'm not aware of another country on the planet
Yeah, I think
that
you're
has
right.
legalized cannabis
Federally.
for all uses for all people above the age of 18 or 19.
Right.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, you've been in, I guess the cannabis culture for a very long time. How are you feeling about this? What are your thoughts about this? Like, I'm curious from your standpoint.
Like the
what do you-
law itself, you mean, for example?
I think anywhere you want to take it.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, vis-a-vis the law, I don't want to get into the details of it. Most people that are aware, that are tuned in to the stuff, are aware that there are limitations.
Right.
Some people don't like it very much. I'm much more optimistic because I think it's just a game changer. Period. The mere fact that it's happening, and once it's in, and it's been around for 3 or 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, then all the naysayers and the doubters are not going to have a leg to stand on. They're not going to see naked people running down the street bashing windows in or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're going to find out that it all unfolds easily and there's no problem really. There are always going to be people that abuse cannabis, as people will abuse any substance, and
Right.
even television or whatever.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's what Gabor Mate would just refer to as that sort of universal tendency toward addiction. Period. But you can't blame cannabis for that.
Right.
In fact, one of the reasons people are so attracted to it is because it is such a good plant, and and so of course they can go overboard with that. And that's one of the reasons I'm really happy about the legalization thing, is because it will, I hope anyway, permit more balanced and open conversations in the culture. That people will be then able to. We won't have so many people trying to say, don't do this,
Right.
That won't wash in the same way. They'll have to say, well, okay. I actually could see myself, I don't know if I ever would do this, but I'd kind of like to go around and educate younger people to say, listen, there are cons to using this plant. There are some issues that you might be concerned about as an adolescent. There's research isn't 100% finalized, but there's indications that there's at least temporary compromise in what they call executive function with adolescents, especially with heavy use, and especially if the younger you start. That kind of thing, there is a powerful potential for psychological addiction, not physical. Let's get that one straight.
Right.
I mean, most people can smoke their brains out for years and go cold turkey, and maybe they have a little bit of irritation for a few days.
Right.
Their sleep patterns change,
Right.
and then it's smooth sailing, right?
Right.
So let's forget that one. But there's definitely problems. But on the other hand, there are these increasingly understood wonderful medical uses, and just as a general relaxant for people, and also a sleep aid. And then, of course, my little niche is that perhaps its greatest potential on some level is as a spiritual ally.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit deeper? I wanted to just be curious on how you actually think that it does potentially change people or shift people. Because if that's going to be happening on more of a mass scale now, in Canada at least, what do you see as the potential outcome of that for people?
Well, maybe I'll just start with a little brief anecdote. I was sitting on a beach one evening and looking out at the Pacific Ocean down in Oregon by myself on a log, and I deliberately went out there just before sunset and had a couple of puffs of this joint that I didn't want to carry back across the border into Canada, so I wanted to finish it off.
Oh, yeah, you got to take care
And
of
it was a particularly good strain that I'd gotten from a dispensary in Bellingham sometime before that. And I had, I think, 2 tokes on it. And I just sat, some thoughts came, but I also just sat in silence, which I could talk about a bit more as the sort of gateway. That's kind of answering your question on one level. But I sat there, and a thought or realization that came up fairly quickly was, this isn't a drug. This is a invitation to reality. So of course you could call it a drug, but one way of thinking about cannabis is a term that's used with other psychedelics, which is non-specific amplifier, or sometimes they say unspecific amplifier.
Interesting.
So what it does is it gives you a temporary boost of physical, emotional, mental, psychic energy. I don't mean psychic like you suddenly, blah, blah, but your psyche becomes energized in a sense, It opens things up. There's a biochemical explanation for that as well. But suffice it to say for the moment that it amplifies energies. And so if you can channel that, and this is why it's actually, I think of it as an advanced spiritual medicine. It is a tricky plant. You were talking earlier about, finding your relationship to this plant. And it's almost more than any other substance, especially, within the general realm of, mind manifesting like psychedelics. It's a tricky one. Like most people aren't, with ayahuasca, for example, yes, you can not learn from it. Even when you have a deep experience, it may not affect your ongoing life, but you're not going to go around abusing it in the same way that you can abuse cannabis. You can wake and bake with cannabis, and
chances are you're not doing ayahuasca every day.
No, it's not going to work too well for you that way, and it's not how it works at all. But there are some very, for years, I feel like I'm still, after, essentially 45 to 50 years of use of this plant, I feel like I'm still refining my relationship to it in a way. I don't want to do it too often. In case people are listening, on that issue, I don't want to, cast a pall of negativity over people who use it daily, because there are people who do use it that way, both for medical reasons and just because it kind of puts them in a balanced zone. It's known in some circles as a homeostatic balancer. It creates that condition, and so some people function quite nicely with that, and that's fine. For the kind of spiritual use that I and a lot of other people are interested in, it helps to go somewhat deeper. And so if you use it less often in general, you're almost certainly going to have sharper, deeper effects that way.
Right.
That's one thing. And again, there's just this dependence issue. If you start to use it all the time, again, depending on your particular, nature or whatever, you could easily become, in a sense, addicted that
psychologically.
way.
So if, like you're saying, if that's your only way of tapping into an energetic or spiritual, experience, then it could become like this crutch where there's whether it's just seated meditation or Kundalini yoga or whatever else, or maybe even just a hike in nature. These other ways to connect, to feel that connection in different intensities. But like you said, this is like your only way that you're really making that connection, then it could probably get out of balance.
I think so. It's going to have diminishing returns for one thing. It's going to become very ordinary. I mean, if you're high all the time, then that's your normal, right? Whereas if you leave it, some of the people in the book, for example, they talk about doing cannabis fasts before they do a major ceremony with ayahuasca, or even a cannabis ceremony. They'll do a week of no cannabis, or even longer sometimes, just to make sure that the system is kind of clean and ready for that to go real sharp and real deep. I think one of the things I mentioned this a few moments ago, that's really central to human life altogether, and you don't have to think of yourself as a spiritual person or anything really, but the way to learn the most about how to live well on this life is to be able to calm your mind, to be able to silence your mind, and most people don't really quite understand that, because we've built our whole lives on a kind of a narrative package that involves almost constant thinking from most people, especially in these modern cultures. And so the gateway, the Persian mystic poet Rumi is really good on this one. He has a lot of quotes and little lines about the necessity of silencing the mind. One of my favorites is, silence is the language of God, all else is poor translation, right? And it's things like, don't let your thoughts cover over the moon of your heart, that sort of thing. It's cannabis or no cannabis, that's a sort of essential core spiritual principle, right? Is that we have to surrender, in a sense. We have to let go. That's Kris. We'll come back to him, I guess. Talks about that as well. That what Buddhists call the illusory or the non-existent self, which is the self that has this kind of set of concepts that sees itself as separate from everything, disconnected from spirit, planet, others, etc., separate. And the deep mystics like Kris understand that doesn't exist. The people who, the reason people have been teaching this for several thousand years is because they've had these experiences, right? And then hopefully even grounded them into an ongoing state, so to speak, So it's this notion that we are in real ways far more connected than we've allowed ourselves, or our culture has allowed us to be, right? And again, bringing cannabis back into it, if you think of it as a sacred plant, as an advanced spiritual medicine, then if you can channel that amplified or that non-specific amplification into letting go, paying attention, giving it all your attention, then you can just go deeper. It can actually open you up, open up your heart, calm you down, put you in a space of groundedness and peace. Ultimately it can do that. Yeah.
I really appreciate just hearing it worded in the sense of an advanced spiritual practice. Just kind of having that orientation to it. I think that's, I mean, I feel like I've been going through this maturation process in every area of my life, really, but having a maturing relationship to this plant, which is, like you said, it is very tricky, and it is just very pleasurable on a recreational level, and seductive and incredible on so many levels, right? So I can see why approaching if you can really start to relate properly, whatever that looks like for you, the individual, how it's like a very advanced practice because of how seductive or elusive it can be during the ongoing relationship, right?
Yeah, and if you think of the simple sort of bare attention type, follow the breath kind of meditation as the sort of universal spiritual practice, that's the sort of purest, the no mind kind of practice, then cannabis can deepen your meditation that way. But again, as we've been discussing, you can't rely on that all the time because it'll start to have diminishing returns. So you need to have the meditation practices and the yoga practices and so on.
So with all that, going back to Andy's kind of question, how do you see this? So we're describing the possibility of the relationship of this plant ally, rippling that out into the population now. Now, not everyone's going to have that relationship, but more people will. So how do you see that unfolding as we go forward in the decades to come?
I'm not really in the prophecy business, so I don't
Come on, Steve.
I don't know
Where's your
what's
crystal ball?
actually going to happen, but that's what the book's for, is hopefully directing people to treat it in that way so that it can do what it could do, which is, to answer that, if it turns out what I would hope, the best way, so to speak, then more people would be using cannabis that way, and then what it would do is it would calm them down, because that's the other thing too. This has been coming to me a lot lately, this notion that we need to slow down. We need to slow that's a Buddhist teaching too. Slow down the speed of mind. There's so much that we're missing when we've got thoughts going on in our mind and that we're sort of caffeinated in our bodies, that there's this edge, stress and all that. Human beings in general need to slow way, way down. And when you start doing that, then the whole world opens up in a sense. The less me, the more truth, the more reality, the more world in a sense, right? So cannabis, if you channel it that way, can do that. can slow you down, start noticing things around you, like, oh, wow, that color of that flower, it's so beautiful.
Being more present to life.
Yeah, being moment by moment, right?
Right.
Second by second,
Yeah.
That's what, many people such as Eckhart Tolle and all those people, his whole book is called The Power of Now, right?
Yeah,
that's
so
that
true.
right there, those 4 words, the power of now. Power and now are powerful. That's a powerful concept,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That right now, at Tolle, in fact, in that book says something like, the now is never enough for people. They always want to add something to it, or go somewhere, or be somewhere, or move ahead. That's being out of the now. Like you're looking forward, or you're looking back.
Yeah.
You're speeding around. You've got all these things in your head. Slow down. Let some space happen in that. It doesn't mean you're not going to do anything. You can still, have an active life. And that's actually another good one from Tolle, because he said, you don't even necessarily have to be sitting down to meditate. Some people don't, they're just not going to have time to do that. They got 3 kids and a full-time job or whatever, and they got to cook and blah, 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 blah. You can meditate wherever you are. By just tuning into the moment, paying attention. Oh, gee, am I breathing? Am I letting my breath go? Am I grounded? In the midst of activity. So again, not necessarily wanting to do that with cannabis on the job, but one of the contributors to the book, Joan Bellow, is really good on this idea that it's not about having these sort of peak experiences. You can have peak experiences, like I was mentioning with ayahuasca, for example, and you might have 100 ayahuasca ceremonies, notches on your belt, and be the same person that you were when you started, because you haven't integrated it back into your life.
So true.
And learned those lessons, right? Yeah. So similarly with cannabis, she, the way she puts it is, it's an accumulating learning process where you're, by tapping into it with some regularity, you're recognizing, yes, I can calm down, I can open my heart a little bit, I can be more present, I can appreciate music, visuals, tenderness. Just be tender. It can softens people. That's another thing that goes along with this slowing down. We need to be more tender in general, right? Let that tender heart be there. My old Buddhist teacher used to have a Chogyam Trungpa talked about soft front and firm back. So we're not talking about being weak and effeminate for a man, or like, oh, that's not masculine. It actually, true strength, unconditional strength, comes from letting down the guard.
Say that again.
Soft, open front, and firm back. That's cool. The strength. Yeah. It's the warrior kind of side of it, right? Is like, you're going to be strong. Like Tom Petty's song, I won't back down.
Yeah.
But you're also not putting up all these barriers and making yourself inaccessible to people and to yourself.
Right, because you're standing up straight, you're exposing like all the soft parts, the vulnerable parts of your body, which is mean I'm open, I'm vulnerable, but I'm also like present and strong and tall. So we have that aspect of the warrior, but the aspect of like being gentle and peaceful and compassionate as well.
Well, it's almost such a ridiculously overused word to say love, but that is the ground of being, right? And as Kris talks about that in these, unbelievably deep psychedelic experiences he has, when there's no self left and you just are absorbed into the universal mind, you recognize, yes, it's all driven by love. That's God, or that's the source somehow, right? Yeah.
So what you're saying is you're predicting people might become nicer.
Yeah, but not in a wimpy way.
No, of course not. We're not going to be wimpy. It's going to be nicer.
You know who you are. Again, my Buddhist teacher and others, teachers have called it, he called it authentic presence. You're not afraid to be yourself. You're not sort of buddying up to the world just to get approval or to be liked or to be safe or whatever.
Right.
You have the confidence, that's the firm back, to be who you are, but also to have your heart open and let that love be there,
Right.
Let that love come through you like that.
I think that's one of the huge aspects, how it affects individuals, right? And that's how I think I'm optimistic and hopeful that if we have more people that are experiencing that and living that way, and I think it'll accelerate, say, like some of the teachings of Eckhart Tolle and some of being more present and, being more open with your heart and more sensitive and more compassionate. And if more individuals are experiencing that, I think there'll be some sort of like, compassion networking going on, and eventually it'll just start, probably diminishing like aggression and anger and maybe suffering and pain and all these different things can
all that
be minimized
definitely.
because of this. And I think
Yeah.
cannabis could be an accelerator of all that.
Very much, some of the people in the book and others have thought, like to think of cannabis as the universal sacrament for the sort of non-denominational religion of the future. That it's safe, it's accessible to everybody.
There. That's
Yeah.
an interesting concept.
Yeah, I mean, I could envision it being used sacramentally like that all over the world, and that, if as you say, Andy, if enough people do that, it will make a difference.
I think we're going to see a
like
difference.
100 monkeys. No, that's another thing.
That is a theory, though. It's like that when you hit that tipping point in the
certain peak,
population,
yeah,
then all of a
yeah.
sudden it's like, it becomes the thing that's acceptable within that society to do, and then everyone starts doing it.
Which I heard actually is less than 50%. Like people think like once.
I'd say way less than 50%.
Yeah, it's like there's a momentum thing. It's like who knows what it is, like 15,
Actually,
20%, whatever
I think
it is.
I've heard, just to finish up this point, that it can be done with like with a 10% of the population who's like really engaged and like very vocal about it, because it's like that 10% can seem a lot more amplified than it actually is.
Absolutely.
If they're kind of noisy about the whole thing actually, but it's just like that can be enough to be like, this is an acceptable thing now, so I don't have to be afraid of it. There's enough people that are pro this idea or that way of being that I can just go ahead and do that
Absolutely.
now. Yeah.
There's one of my favorite sayings. I'm never sure if I can remember the exact wording, but it's by Victor Hugo, and it's something to the effect of, "There's nothing as powerful as an idea whose time has come," and that is the idea whose time, at least if it hasn't quite come, needs to come now, because we have sort of hit a karmic wall on the planet, and because it's so necessary that we get this idea that we need to slow down and open up, that we're connected and all these things, that we actually are, sparks of the divine and so on. Because that's so urgent now, it probably will be understood, and it could happen kind of just like that. The way that social media and stuff work.
Sure. Yeah.
In fact, I used to be quite involved with the Native American church and the peyote ceremonies, and the elder that used to run a lot of those meetings said that he and others had a vision that there will come a kind of almost like a quantum moment or something like that, not like a literal second on the clock, but where this world, which Kris also talks about, that he was getting messages from the universe that we're heading toward both environmental and economic collapse. He uses the term the Great Awakening, but he says that's the universe is saying it's coming, to humanity and the birth of the new human. But before there can be a Great Awakening, he says there has to be a great death. So that's the death, that's the ego death that we're talking about, but it's also sort of a collective ego death, a cultural ego death, where this illusory, non-sustainable kind of mental trajectory that the planet is on has to crumble in some ways. So this Native American church elder that I was referring to said that this vision they've had is there will come a moment when there's been enough of a crack or an opening in this collapsing, old way, that something will be able to come through that crack. So a new vision, and then people will go, almost like that,
well,
right?
It's interesting because even like hardcore economists, such as like Peter Schiff, he's like he goes on like he's how if we want to get that, even just the economy healthy again, we're gonna have to go through this really rough period, like suffering, and like people are gonna have to really. We've been living on this credit for a long time, and now that's going to come back. Like this is what he says. Just on a purely economic standpoint, it's like to get this correction that we need to have, it's going to be very challenging. That's what he predicts anyway. So it's just you're kind of getting that universality effect happening between different experts in different fields are saying like, well, and like the fishing thing, overfishing. Another example is like there might be a period where we do not get to have access to ocean wild fish for a while as a species because of the overfishing. Like, I mean, I don't know what the stats on that are, but I've heard that before as well. So you're starting to see this universality of this great death, this shift that needs to happen. And a lot of the current systems may be either evolving or disrupted to make this happen. And maybe I think there's been so many little jump off points through this conversation so far that I think can take us into Christopher Beisch's work. But I think, why don't we dive into that now? And now you
Sure.
just turned me on to him last week.
Yeah.
Can you just, maybe he's going to be at the conference, so
Yeah.
maybe why don't you elaborate a little bit more on him and his journey,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll go from there.
I would say Kris is, meets the definition of a true mystic. I don't know if he would use that word for himself, but his experiences seem to demonstrate that. And by the way, he's not recommending that other people do this. And in fact, did you listen to the thing right through?
Yes,
At the end, he said
I
if
would
he
have
were
done
to
it
do it, he
differently.
would have gone in more gently, right?
Yeah. Had more balancing between the earth medicines of ayahuasca and psilocybin with the more cosmology medicines of like LSD and stuff.
But
That's
also,
very
as he
interesting.
pointed out, the energies when you, okay, so probably I should describe what he did. He was a university professor. He's retired now.
Religious studies, I think, right?
Yeah, religious. He was a religious philosopher, basically.
Right.
Yeah. And early in his career, he came upon the work of Stan Grof, who had been working with LSD legally in Czechoslovakia as the head psychiatrist in a hospital with LSD for 13, 14 years, supervised over 5,000 therapeutic sessions in that hospital before he moved to the United States and started. He was the one who invented holotropic breathwork, by the way, as a replacement for that once LSD became illegal. Anyway. Kris sort of said, I want that. I want to have those kinds of experiences that Stan is talking about. So he undertook a 20-year journey from 1979 to 1999 with a sitter and high dose. I haven't heard the dosage yet. I'm going to ask him that.
He says it in the video.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
And I mean, I might have misheard it because I didn't rewind it and check. Because I was going to ask you. Do you remember what he said? I think he said like 750 micrograms.
Okay,
Does that sound?
I think that qualifies
reasonable?
for high dose.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think it's very high, but I want to
Yeah.
make sure that it wasn't outlandishly high. But I know it's
No, I know.
it's a strong dose of
I've
LSD.
done 600 or 800 once or twice.
Okay.
And I know people have done 1,000 or more. But
Okay, I think
the
he said
750 sounds like enough to sort of take you out of Kansas. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, his his new book, which isn't out yet, called Diamonds from Heaven, this literally goes through every one of these 73 sessions that he did over a 20-year period. And it was actually a very real thing. He said more real than this reality. And every time he went in, he went back to exactly where he'd left off before. They took him from there and they took him a little further. You're ready to see this now. Because one of the reasons, he wouldn't recommend this for most people, and even, again, for himself to redo, is because it's actually incredibly hard on the body. We're talking about things like Kundalini things. I know a guy, without getting too far off the track here, I know a fellow who he badly injured his physical body by having an overwhelming Kundalini experience, which was literally like being hit by a powerful lightning bolt, and it cracked several of his vertebrae because it threw him back like this,
Wow.
right? And did some other damage to shoulder and arm areas and stuff, and took him years and years of therapy and stuff to get over that kind of stuff. So Kris talks about how it just, he didn't have that happen, but it just kind of, ravaged his body because it just overtakes you and runs this immense amount of energy through
Right,
you.
it's the energetic volume
Yeah.
and I think intensities and frequencies he was
Yeah.
saying. And it took him he said 10 years to kind of reground after the 20 years
Yes,
of work.
exactly. So essentially what he learned, as far as I could say it and understand it in a short time here, is that, first of all, from his own actual experience, this self is an illusion. We are not disconnected. It's just that we've built walls around us to give us that illusion to feel safe, right? So when you start to dissolve those walls, you recognize that, in fact, we are connected to everything, and that there is an eternal creative intelligence, which I've always thought was a sort of a no-brainer, but that it's there. And love is the core. I kind of like to think of the creator or creators as sort of loving artists. They always want to play. They always want to create new things. Oh, let's try this. Like so create a planet that has like 20% oxygen and all this stuff and a certain amount of sunlight and warmth and water and air and all this stuff, and let's see what happens. That's kind of the way I'd like to think of the life altogether in that way. It's like it's endless. We know it's endless. It has to be. I mean, how could there have been a beginning, right? Impossible. There will never be an end somehow. What would happen after the end? Oh, well, I don't know.
Right.
There's no end to space. I mean, space must be, in a sense, just a thought on some level, right? Because what if you could go, in a straight line, where would you come to a wall, and then would there be nothing, and what would that be, so in other words, it's just the endless play of mind, it's the endless play of love, seems to be the message that you get from the people like Kris who have made that deep exploration. So I think another key about what he's done for us, in a sense, because that's again part of the job of the mystics, I think, is to sort of have these experiences that not everyone can open up to somehow, and then tell us that we too can enter more deeply into this unconditioned reality. So he talks about, again, this is the stuff that he didn't make this up. This is not his philosophical speculations. This is him saying this is what the universe, he calls it the universe, it's kind of like saying the creator or the God or whatever. The universe showed him, as he developed, he went deeper and deeper and deeper into the heart of life altogether, that we are about to birth a new human, and it'll be quite different. It'll be a human that understands it's not separate, and that understands that we, have these compassionate, loving hearts and this sort of almost perhaps limitless ability to create, right?
Well, and, just to kind of maybe support that, you can look backwards and probably confirm somehow, I mean, I don't know how you would, but look at how consciousness itself has evolved from the very early stages of life to the most advanced that we know of right now, the human experience.
Yeah.
That evolution of consciousness has been evolving, and it hasn't stopped evolving. So where are we going?
Yeah.
Right?
Homo numinous. The birth of the new human. Yeah, the birth of the new human.
Right.
Yeah, and in fact, people like Kris and others that have had these deep explorations would probably say, we have to, because otherwise we cannot keep going in the direction we're going. We've reached a karmic kind of dead end with that. We're self-destructing. I mean, I don't want to be too dark about it. I mean, I don't want to scare people, but one has to be realistic about this. And in fact, being realistic, in my view, actually should, if you are realistic in the right way, give you inspiration and energy, like more commitment to participate in the change, to contribute, like to, as most people who know anything about this would understand, and I'm sure you guys do, it starts with yourself. You have to do your own healing work, and you have to get that to a point where you actually are arising out of that place somehow, and then just commit yourself to whatever fits your passions and talents, right? How can I do this? By what you guys are doing right here, for example, right? It can be any way of doing it, but we need sort of the, everybody who can possibly do it to participate in helping move this change forward. And, and there will, hopefully anyway, come a point where that certain number is reached where the energy is strong enough, that it starts to filter out through those less kind of supple or more resistant, right? Yeah.
What do you think are some of the more practical things that people can do to help that process along, on the individual level?
You mean in terms of their contribution to this?
Contribution to it, maybe their own development or
healing.
Healing, all of those things.
Well, I mean, there's lots of different paths, of course. As I mentioned earlier, I think the simple sitting down, shut up and pay attention kind of meditation, where you're not necessarily, and this is not in any way diminishing or poo-pooing other kinds of techniques, but the most powerful and purest meditation technique is the one where you just sit down, strong back, open, soft front, so to speak, and watch the thoughts come, watch them go. Don't attach to them in the moment. No, as my old Buddhist teacher used to say, no praise, no blame for any particular thought, which is a wonderful antidote to the kind of moralism of some religions.
Right.
There's no moralism. Like maybe you'd like to kill somebody. You just look at the energy of that. You just let that be there and let it go, and then you're going to calm down, hopefully, and you're not going to go kill that person. Right.
Yeah. Right.
So you start to realize that there is this connected mind underneath all this stuff, this package that we've created, the ego, the individual illusory self that we've created. So sitting meditation is probably the universal practice. Lots of other practices, chanting, chant can build energies, and deepen things, and yoga, practice.
So basically, explore different spiritual disciplines and traditions and things like that.
Yeah. I'm partial to the psychedelic medicines, including cannabis, because one way of thinking of it is, when the patient's illness is advanced, you need strong medicine, right?
Right.
And, if you're using that as a metaphor for the planet, the patient is very ill right now, and we need these strong medicines. They are the most direct conduit to opening up to reality, if they're done right. And that's, again, why what the conference and, that sort of thing exists for, is to help give information, share information, to use these things wisely.
Right.
You need a lot of attention to what they call set and setting, right?
Oh, yeah.
Who are you? What did you bring to it? What's your intention? What you want out of it? How you look after yourself? Diet, all those things before you do a session, etc. And then how you do it. Is there somebody guiding it who knows what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Because they are dissolving ego potentially, and for almost all human beings, that can be terrifying. We're trying to open up to something that's bigger than the safe place that we've built, or what we think is the safe place, that actually never feels completely safe because we're always struggling. But we want to open up to something more real and more grounded, and so the medicines, in conjunction with integrating practices like sitting meditation and yoga and other practices and so on like that, are the most direct medicine prescription for humanity, I would say. So if you can find the right place and the right way and so on to do the medicines, I think that can make a huge difference. And there can be some morphic resonance with that too, as more people do it, right?
Right.
And then as far as what you do with that, I think it's just a matter of knowing yourself. Tuning in. Who are you? What are your natural talents? How can I don't think there's any one way. You can, if you're artistically oriented, you can make music, you can write, you can do poetry, you can do direct activism, and get involved in causes, and there's any number of ways to do that. Or maybe you're just a person who has a very simple kind of mind and a simple life, and just by calming yourself and opening your heart, you just become an example for other people without any agenda, really. Like you go to the store and people light up when you come in, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Make somebody better, someone's day a little better.
Yeah. You cheer people up as you walk through the day.
Why not?
Be the being.
Yeah, there's an old. I wish I could find this again. There's a little story from the Sufi tradition about some guy who'd led such an exemplary life that something like a spirit comes to him and says, we'll give you anything you want, because you've done so well. And he says, okay. What I want is that whenever I'm walking toward the sun, wherever my shadow falls behind me, people get a blessing. In other words, he's not even seeing it. Right? So he can't get attached, no ego there, right?
Wow.
He can't go, oh yeah, look what I did. I just kind of made those people's lives better. It's just like he just wants to help. He just wants to wake people up. He just wants to see them be happy,
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the basic message. We've been given this amazing gift to be on this planet, and we can be joyful, we can be calm, we can be at peace with ourselves and with life, Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
are we running out of time?
We're running out of time because we want to get.
I got to get home and cook.
I know.
Oh no,
we got a couple minutes.
Priorities,
so,
got to feed the body.
Let's
feed my wife.
Yeah.
She's working.
Even
this
more
week.
important.
She's working this week. I got to get some food ready and go pick her up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we got a couple more minutes. So, I'm personally really excited for this conference. I'm very disappointed. I'm going to miss it this year. But
Sounds
Flowdesk will
incredible.
be representing for sure.
Yep.
But I am disappointed I will be missing it.
Mm-hmm.
But Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll let you have your final word, but I just want to
Sure.
kind of say before that, just a thank you for doing this work year after year in different forms, whether it's through the editing or the writing or your ceremony or your meditations, and obviously the conference. Like, thank you. I think it's fantastic, and I'm very happy to have met you, and I think it's I'm so, I don't know, I'm very optimistic, and my energy is growing more and more positive towards all of this, all the stuff we talked about. So I'm very I can feel it, and I just want to thank you.
Good.
So, but yeah, let's final words in terms of the conference
Sure.
and anything there for yourself.
By the way, Dennis McKenna referred to himself as a worried optimist.
It's a good term.
And one thing about the conference for it's not even about, if you have to miss it, but Mark Horan that we mentioned has set up what he calls a VIP program where people can purchase a package that, if you're going to the conference, would include that. But it's also, there's a membership thing that he's selling. It's not too expensive, I don't think. And it will give you access to all the videos of every year from 8 years of videos, right? So if, you can still watch the videos after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sign me up. I'm going to, yes. Thank you. That's great. I'm glad that's going to happen.
I don't know what else I want to say. I have a website, cannabisandspirituality.com. I don't honestly add to it that often, but there's some reasonable stuff on there. And I invite people to submit things that I could put on there too. Cool. There's a fellow who's doing that for me right now, writing about his personal spiritual experiences with cannabis, that kind of thing. And I have a Facebook group, Cannabis and Spirituality, and again, I encourage people to share things and offer them to that and so on, so we get more dialogue going. And again, the conference, spiritplantmedicine.com, buy tickets online for that. It's going to be at UBC in Vancouver, November 2nd to 4th. And I barely touched the lineup. There's 15 or 16 amazing people coming.
It sounds incredible.
Yeah.
What a lineup this year.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I do want to say this if we have another minute.
Sure.
I'm really excited about this. I keep thinking about what are we going to do on the Saturday evening, because from 10 till 6, they've been taking in this immense amount of information. People have been, participants have been taking it in, and their brains are full essentially by 6 o'clock, So, but on the other hand, they're there for the weekend, so like, could we do something? So what I've come up with for this year is we're going to do a cannabis-friendly ceremony light, that L-I-T-E spelling. And so we're going to gather everybody back after dinner, and we're going to suggest that those who are friendly to cannabis step outside for a moment and have a puff, but treat it as a sacrament in that way, and don't just do it casually like yak, like, who won the baseball game sort of thing, and come in, sit down in silence, maybe meditate for a few minutes. Then we're going to do some Om chanting. We've got an amazing didgeridoo player is going to do a few things. So we're going to just do this like hour to hour and a half of a kind of a light cannabis ceremony where they're sitting in their chairs, and they don't need to have taken cannabis.
It's so awesome
to
that we
participate in that.
We can do these kind of things these days, and it's safe to do those things.
The timeliness is wonderful, isn't it? With the legalization on October 17th.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's a Saturday evening. You're going to host
Saturday evening. Yeah, at the conference. Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, Stephen, thank you very much for everything. Thanks for coming on again and sharing. I'm sure we'll have you back on Vancouver Real. Yeah. Andy, anything to wrap up for you?
No.
Okay. Beautiful.
Short and sweet.
Well, let's wrap it up. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Like, comment, share if you can, if you appreciated this. And we look forward to, we never gave out the promo code for Floathouse.
Well, Vancouver Real is the promo code.
Yeah, save you
20% discount.
You made it. Come check out Floating and answer all your questions at floathouse.ca. If you haven't explored it yet, it's another amazing modality for experiencing yourself.
Yeah, another practice you can pick up if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And deepen your practice.
And it can function very well with cannabis as well if you're open to that.
That's what they say. I've heard on the street.
Right. Have you heard that?
I heard that.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Cool.
Makes sense to me.
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining us, folks. And until next time.
To whatever is.
To whatever.